The Craig Ferguson Pants on Fire tour is on sale now. It's a new show, it's new material, but I'm afraid it's still only me, Craig Ferguson, on my own, standing on a stage, telling comedy words. Come and see me. Buy tickets. Bring your loved ones. Or don't come and see me. Don't buy tickets and don't bring your loved ones. I'm not your dad. You come or don't come, but you should at least know it's happening. And it is. The tour kicks off late September and goes through the end of the year and beyond. Tickets are available at thecraigfergusonshow.com/tour. They're available at thecraigfergusonshow.com/tour or at your local outlet in your region. My name is Craig Ferguson. The name of this podcast is Joy. I talk to interesting people about what brings them happiness. My guest today is to my mind, one of the most important artists working in America today. He is a singer, he is a songwriter, he is a composer of beautiful music, be it classical or any other genre you care to mention. I'm not usually comfortable around people with great talent, but he is a very personable gentleman and made it quite easy for me. Please welcome Rufus Wainwright. The first thing I want to do is apologize to you because I was very much looking forward to meeting you in person in Los Angeles. And now I'm in Denver, which means wherever you are, you win. And secondly, I'm breaking my own rules a little bit today because I don't normally have people I'm a little intimidated by. I'm a little intimidated by you. So let me tell you what I'm doing, which is I'm breaking my rules by I really wanted to talk to you in person because I feel like that helps. And B, or two, I don't normally there's a couple of people that I've never ever wanted. I kind of break my own rules a little bit. I never invited David Bowie on my old late night show because I thought, what if it doesn't work out? What if he's horrid? And I've had the same problem with you and Sting. David Bowie and Sting, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah. So this is really, if it works out okay with you, then I'll book Sting. But other than that, it's not happening.
Yeah, coupled white male.
Did you you worked with him, didn't you? Didn't you do a tour?
I worked with Sting a few times, and I knew David somewhat. He came to a few of my shows back in the day, and we actually even had a bit of a not a disagreement, but a misunderstanding at one point early on, which was very exciting.
It sounds very exciting. Yeah. Can I ask what it was about?
Yeah, no, what had happened is that we were both doing this Tibet house benefit. I was very young. I think I was 23 or something. And we were both doing this benefit. And I was also making an album at the time. I was making Want One. I was a little older than 20. I was more, God, anyways. So I'm getting up there.
And, tell me about it. I'm 62.
I know. It's crazy. But anyways, I was making a record and I was using a lot of David's musicians. Most notably this great guy called oh God, now it's gonna happen. Great guitar player, Spooky Ghost is Jerry Leonard, great guitar player. And and then I had his drummer and so forth. And I think David Bowie felt a little bit scared that I was poaching his band at the time, which I wasn't aware of, but that was sort of an underlying thing that he had. Anyways, we were doing this show together for the Tibet House benefit, and there was this quartet, a string quartet that was playing that was also that David Bowie had brought in to do with him, and I said, well, there's a quartet available, maybe I'll do something with the quartet as well, and it was kind of offered in that way. So I rehearsed with the quartet, gave them something to do, and then the first time I met David Bowie, who when he was sitting there, he was thinking, this guy's trying to steal all my musicians. You know, he was just like that. The first thing I said to him was, hey, David, thank you so much for letting me work with your musicians. Like, it was the first thing I brought up. And it kind of took and I was talking about the quartet just because they were there. But then he used to have this woman with him, Coco, who would hang out, who was sort of his protector, this woman. And she
I think I might have met her.
Yeah, and she immediately shielded him from me and was like, get away, and don't, you know, I don't know. So it was not a great first meeting. But then subsequently he understood that I wasn't going to steal his entire band, and then he, you know, was fine. He came to a lot of shows, and it was fine.
It's funny because I always sort of imagine musicians to have a sort of collegiate environment where they're quite open and collaborative with each other. But I suspect maybe there may be egos involved as well.
Yeah,
maybe
slightly,
it's not quite like
slightly. I mean, look, what always struck me the most about David is how almost childlike he was. Still, I mean, in the sense that he still had such a sense of wonder about everything. Like when he went to see my show, and I think he enjoyed it. I could really tell that he was dumbfounded by what he saw. And I'm sure that's the way he was like with a lot of things that he loved. You know, it was like a genuine kind of openness. But that comes, you know, with also a little bit of, you know, childlike anger.
Yeah. Well,
and fear.
But it's interesting because I wonder if you have the same thing, because you travel across many different type genres of music. It seems to me effortlessly, like you just inhabit one and then move to another. You can move from folk to jazz to Broadway kind of razzmatazz, and remain yourself within it. Is there a sense of? Do you have a sense of wonder about it? Do you retain a sense of wonder about music?
Well, I have to maintain a sense of wonder about everything in my life in order not to, you know, I'm not going to say slit my wrists. That's a little over dramatic, but you know, to certainly,
I understand,
to certainly function, I have to keep that spark going. And yes, it enables me to, I think what I've managed to do, which is pretty good, is that I've managed to sort of, you know, I dropped out of school twice. First I dropped out of music school, and then I dropped out of art school. Like, I never received a major education in college, and I think that was a real saving grace for me, because therefore I never really felt like I totally knew what was happening or what I was doing, or like I never had a degree to be like, no, it's official, because I would find that. So I always feel like I'm learning as I go along, and that's. Yeah, I think it's important to try to remain ignorant a little bit.
It's funny. Nice I'm fascinated by that take on it, because how you know your experience of you, because I find you like I mean I know and love your work, but I know next to nothing about you. I mean I know what's available on the internet, but I feel like your work and in a way. I know that it's probably a comparison that's done a lot, but I had the same kind of feeling with Leonard Cohen's work, that I felt there was a kind of humorous, almost gothic menace with a sense of fun, which I could never quite pin down. I feel like it's contained somewhere in a minor chord somewhere, or maybe it's that super kind of weird Canadian intellectual world that I find fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit I think the Canadian aspect cannot be underestimated, in the sense that, look, I was born in the U.S. I was born in New York. My dad's Loudon is American, has lived in New York his whole life. But my mother, Kate McGarrigle, was Canadian, and yes, when my parents divorced, I moved to Canada and was brought up there mainly. And I do feel that there is this kind of, And it kind of also, interestingly enough, relates to Scotland and to England, is that, growing up, and the fact that it was Quebec, which has a whole other, with the whole French thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, is that you're in this strange world where you're part of a faded empire, and it's it was much more pronounced. Like in the 80s, it was so pronounced in Canada as opposed to in England, where it had become sort of, they'd had enough. And certainly in Scotland. But it was still so trying to be English, but then you're right next to the United States, which is just so dominant. And then I was also in Quebec, so we're all doing this in French. and so you just develop this strange perspective, I guess, of both, being in the middle of everything and also being totally nobody can understand where you come from. Being Canadian has definitely influenced me as an artist.
It has a weird kind of, I wonder if it's something to do with the darkness. I always think that in Scotland, just the fact that there's no light for half the year, really, and it somehow makes a different sort of person.
Well, what's interesting is growing up in Quebec, in Canada, and we had incredibly cold winters, which sadly I don't think they're as cold as they used to be, but they were, these gothically cold winters with a lot of snow. And the whole thing of like how Russia, the Soviet Union was this evil empire that, that nobody could understand. We kind of got it. We we kind of related more to the Soviet Union in terms of what we had to go through in terms of winter. Because at least even you guys had like the Gulf Stream,
That's right. We would get a little bit of beach time.
Yeah. So we kind of understood that mania.
Have you been to Russia?
I went once, many years ago, and it was amazing. And
I found it fascinating because I grew up. I'm older than you, but I grew up with the same information about these people are the evil, different. Yeah. The Soviet thing it's very sterile and they're all kind of like automatons and frightening. And I went there and it's very. Did you go to Moscow?
Yeah, I went to Moscow. Yeah.
Did you go to because I went to Red Square in Moscow. I thought it was it seems to me very high arch camp. Villainy. It was fabulous.
Well, I remember flying to Russia, and definitely getting the sense that you were going into another universe. It has nothing to do. I mean, it's its own planet in a lot of ways, and then once I got there, I felt it. It was even more pronounced. What I will say, though, is that of late, and now I'm just going on and on because I tend to do that, is that I was just in Greece for a wedding, and I'd never been to a Greek Orthodox wedding. I've been to a lot of Catholic weddings. I've been to a lot of, Protestant weddings or whatever. But I'd never been to a Greek Orthodox one. And it really struck me how different it was from the the West, how different the Eastern Church is from the Western Church. It's such a divide, and I don't know. It sort of harkened back to that. That's what the difference is. It's that.
Do you have a connection to a church? Or
no, I don't. I was brought up in a very Catholic place. I went to Catholic school. I was never baptized. My mother was highly affected by the church. She was brought up by nuns and somewhat traumatized by that. And for instance, recently I wrote a Requiem Mass, so that premiered in Paris, and is actually going to be in LA at Disney Hall in May. It has a narrator part in it, and Jane Fonda will be the narrator.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I was gonna offer myself up, but if you've already got Jane, that's
well, you know what she did. That's precisely what she did.
Really?
Because I was at an event with her. I didn't know her too well, but we were just talking, and then I said, "Oh yeah, we just come." I was just in Paris where we premiered the Requiem. It's called the Dream Requiem, and there's a narrator part in it. And in Paris, Meryl Streep did it in Paris.
Okay.
So, and I said, Jane, we're going to bring it to LA and we're going to do it at Disney Hall. And then Jane went, I'm doing it. I was like, what? She was like, I'm doing it. And she immediately hired herself. And
she's Jane Fonda.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah,
definitely. I guess that's it. But pertaining to the religious thing, yeah, that's sort of, I'm not religious, but I'm affected by it somehow.
I think that do you have a belief system that connects to a deity?
I'm definitely not an atheist. I have a strange kind of childlike wonder, hope, whatever, that everything is connected and everything has a reason, and I'm able to sort of tie that together with my music and with my career at all. It's always, fit. I wouldn't say nicely, but it's always managed to come together, shall we say? And
you have a kind of autodidact isn't the right word, but you have a you have a didactic career anyway.
Yes,
you have an odd kind of. Are you looking for something?
I'm a three-headed monster. Because and they're all very separated. One of them is a singer. I'm a real singer. Like I sing my work and I sing other people's work and stuff. And that is its own animal, who I know very little about. It's kind of this creature that, appears, and I kind of just have to ride, and make sure that, to put it back, or it doesn't devour other people. So it's this animalistic side. Then there's the songwriter, which is more sort of like where I come from, like my family. It's like our trade, it's like my sisters do it. My parents did it. It's what I learned how to do. And I love doing it and so forth. And then there's the composer, wanting to be a composer. And I think that's really me in terms of that's what I wanted to do as a human being. I was like, I would like to be a composer. And I've managed to do that somewhat. I mean, it's not all I do, but I'm talking up the Dream Requiem a lot, but it's a big deal for me. So
no, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
But to write a Requiem Mass is almost like one would think it's kind of an act of devotion in a way, yes. Right?
Well, no. What's odd about it is that, I wrote a lot of it here in LA. There's a beautiful mansion in Silver Lake called the Paramore Estate, which is this old. It looks like something from Sunset Boulevard. It's up on top of a hill with these incredible views, and the owner, this wonderful woman Dana. She let me use a wing of the estate to compose the Requiem, and I was there for a long time, for months, and especially the month. I don't know if you remember. If you live in LA, right? You live here.
I have done. I don't anymore, but I lived
there was a winter like a couple of years ago where it was just raining, and it was when there was like 10 feet of snow in the mountains, like, and people. I think I was like
around,
the weather was
around for some of it.
So I was kind of shacked up in this estate, and the estate, after it had been privately owned, had been turned into a Catholic girls' school. So there was all these crosses and Virgin Marys everywhere, and it just, I don't know, it just poured out of me all of these religious kind of feelings, and especially working with the Mass, the Latin Mass. And really, and I was a little frightened at how easily it came forth, and in the end, I decided, I may not be, Catholic or anything, but I would say that certainly in the world we live in right now, which is so crazy and so, troubling, there is a need for some real Christian values. And I'm not talking about the church. I'm not talking about,
I understand.
but just this, like, be good thou shalt not kill,
everyone be nice,
and let's save the poor and be good to the poor, and these kind of simple Christian things, which are very touching, and the world still needs, even though you don't have to do it as a religious person necessarily, and even the religious people aren't doing it right now, which is
it's a real conflict.
Yeah.
Do you? I wonder if you were talking about living in the wing of this like mad old mansion as you write this Requiem Mass. Yeah. Whenever I write, or if I talk to people I write prose, and other people who write prose, they use music as a place to go. A lot of people use music as a place to go go to a place of inspiration, or a place where the doors open up, or to put yourself somewhere else. And I wonder if that's possible for a musician to do, or if there's some kind of other stimulus that has to is the silence the something that does it? Is the music?
Well, it used to be alcohol and drugs.
Well,
and that was a great one.
Yeah,
that did the trick. Now not as much. So I would say, it's funny because once we get into that conversation, I certainly was afraid, when I quit drinking a long time ago, that I wouldn't be inspired, and then I wouldn't be able to find, and get into that place. I have found actually now that aging is the new kind of like inspirational.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Thing of like not feeling so strong, not feeling more vulnerable, seeing your child have complete control over you, and it's sort of, and then that's when I kind of cling to songwriting and to, lyrics and stuff, and or going to a concert and hearing. I find myself much more inspired now in a deep way by what's happening around me, because I've gotten a little older and I kind of understand it more, and therefore it's more frightening.
Yeah, I think the aging thing is a fabulously interesting vein, because I always thought I have a tattoo here where I normally wear my watch of Saturn, the bringer of old age, and and the Saturn in Host the Planet suites was kind of what got me onto it, because in the Planet Suite with all the kind of rumpty tumpty tump pum pum pum, and then the Saturn piece of music is so weird. It's and I feel like aging is. I think you really nailed aging with that these kind of weird pushing minor chords, and it's like. It's very, very odd. Yeah, it's not just the mortality aspect of it; it's the whole kind of.
It's also the gifts that you receive from having survived and gone through these experiences. One thing for me that was so necessary and kind of thought out when I started my career was that. I wasn't going to be this kind of rock and roll tragedy where I was just, this sort of flare that goes up and that's amazing. And then, who knows what could happen, you either disappear or you die or you kind of get bitter or something. And that's sort of why I gravitated more towards classical music as like my main love, and opera and stuff, because in that world, all the best music, all the greatest music is written when you're old. Like all the great composers, the heavyweights, it's always at the end of their life where they finally kind of get into this serious space of contemplation or whatever. And so I've always
makes a great deal of sense. Especially if you look at the rockers who do survive. Something just pinged very loudly there. I really beg your pardon. Okay. The rockers that do survive, they tend to play the songs that they wrote when they were, in their early 20s. The Rolling Stones are still singing "I Can't Get No Satisfaction." After 60 years ago, they wrote that song. And
it's great.
It is a great song, but if you want to, I wonder sometimes what it feels like to be connected so much to a piece of your life, which is so distant.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's sort of. I mean, it's funny you mention that because it is. I feel so fortunate. I mean, look, I had a lot of success when I started out, and but I never quite was. I never kind of hit the summit, you know, that of pop hitness or whatever, and that was the greatest godsend that I could have ever wished for as an artist, because I've always been able to just explore and go further into these other different without having to hark. I mean, yes, there's a couple of songs like Everybody Wants to Hear Me Sing Hallelujah. Okay, we'll do that, and maybe Cigarettes and Chocolate Milk and Poses, like these kind of things. But it's not. But I'm not. My whole career is dominated by those by that work. So I'm very fortunate in that way. I mean, I would have loved the financial perks of having written Hallelujah. but whatever.
I don't know though. I mean, I know quite a few very rich artists. Who I think would be much happier in your shoes for a few less $1 million.
Totally.
I think that the problem is that particularly now, I don't know if you get any pressure to do this. I suspect not, because I think you exist. The way I see you, and this may not be how you are, but the way I see you is you live within your own world. You set the limits to what you want to do. I find myself constantly fighting with people about can you post this on Instagram? Can you do that? And I'm like,
I mean,
why?
I have to do that as well.
Right. Okay. So that makes me feel a bit better.
No. You have to kind of play that game a little bit, and but yes, in the end of the day, I have not. I never took a bite out of the apple or whatever. I just stayed true to what I wanted to do artistically, and in a lot of ways not out of desire. It was just I didn't know how to do anything else. I wasn't particular. I just was so driven by what I heard and saw that I just had to go that way.
Well, I think that's an artistic impulse, though, isn't it? I mean, I think that's the gift of being like that.
I mean, it's funny because there's people. I mean, look, I know, I'm very good friends with Neil Tennant from the Pet Shop Boys, and he's a dear friend, and he
was on my old late night show. He was fabulous.
And he's my favorite person to talk to about all things kind of cultural and historical, and especially to do with show business and so forth. And he, really, he started as a journalist, and he wrote about the pop world, and so for him, like having a pop hit was such a huge deal, and really what he dreamt about. He still knows about great music and great art and stuff like that, but you have to be invested in it, and he was very much invested in it, and he got it. And I was never invested in it, and
well, you come from the strange, dark French, English, Scottish, weird Canada, the daylight, nighttime. I don't know. I imagine you live in in some kind of castle. The books are helping.
It's castle-esque.
Good.
Castle-esque.
Good.
I actually sang at Hearst Castle over the weekend.
Really?
I was up there. I was invited to sing in the they call it the refectory. Okay, yeah, but it's the dining room. But I sang there, and that was pretty wild, because when you think of who had hung out up there, and up on
I'm fascinated by that time. Yeah, actually, this is my pitch to you. Actually, this is what I think. I've been saying this to everybody because of what's going on right now. Like everyone's saying, "Oh, it's so crazy. The politics have never been so crazy, and it's so bad." I've got into reading Gore Vidal's narratives of empire. These it's like 7 novels
Okay.
set from, America. I think it was all the way up to Watergate from the beginning of America.
Okay.
And have you read them?
I haven't read them. I mean, I'm a big fan of his. So.
Oh my God.
Okay.
You've got to read them.
Okay.
Or because they have such in a weird way, I always found Gore Vidal's very reassuring anyway, because I thought if there's somebody that clever around, we'll be all right. And he writes so well about the craziness that America has been going through since the beginning. And I find that stuff. It has a real gothic quality about it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No. I think you're correct. I mean, it's this. I mean, yes, we're gearing up for what will probably be a very violent, period with this.
The
election,
rhetoric is very violent. For sure.
But there's been periods that have been way more violent. I mean, the whole thing of assassinations and people getting beat up and like mobs and stuff. It's very much part of American culture and part of world culture. I mean,
it's part of humans. It's the fight against that. The fight against the, that kind of impulse and darkness is on a big level, on a societal level. It's as hard to change as what you talked about earlier. The idea of moving from the self-destruction of the alcohol and the drugs and all that kind of stuff and moving away from it because it feels like agency. I think that's why people are so attracted to, that kind of rhetoric and violence, because it feels like you have agency in the world when perhaps you don't really.
Right.
And I think that I felt the same. I got sober 32 years ago, and it was I felt the same thing, that I thought, well, I don't know who I am if I'm not drinking and partying. Who am I? And whatever. I always thought I was much funnier when I was drunk, and when I got sober, I didn't think I was as funny, but a lot of people who saw me thought I was much funnier. And it's a different perspective.
Yeah, I know it is. It is so interesting because I have the same thing. I always feel as though I was much funnier when I was stoned and stuff. But I look then at footage, because for me it's been a long time as well. But I look at footage, and I'm hilarious all the time. I mean, just my very nature is hilarious. Whatever the voice, the way I'm kind of twiddling around and the way I see things, and it's me, and I'm not trying to, it's not an act, which is always funnier when it's not an act.
I think the truth is much funnier. It's much harder to believe, but that authenticity and that truth is going to lead you to. I think it seems to have led you to the Gothic mansion in Los Angeles, where you write the Requiem Mass, or singing at Hearst Castle, or not, writing a surefire pop album that will get you the arena tour. And I don't know. I think there's a limit to what money can do for you.
Well, I think it's also, it becomes your drug of choice then becomes artistic exploration. I mean, I'm, if I'm like, one of my greatest stories ever for me in terms of getting sober and what that meant, and it's something that I think about all the time, is that many years ago, I was super high and drunk and stuff, and I went to see this production of Elektra, the opera Elektra by Strauss. Right. And it was an amazing evening, and it was so wild and crazy, and my head exploded and all of that, and I really loved it. And then a few months later, I had went to rehab and got sober. Cut to a few months later, go to the same production of Elektra because it was still at the opera. It was just as amazing, and my head was just as blown. And it was the art that kind of went searing through, and it was just, for me, that was such an emblematic experience of like, oh, okay, you don't need whatever, just focus on that.
No, I get it.
It has all the power.
whenever I talk to someone who's getting sober, who's artistic, and the worry is always is that I won't be able to create, I won't be able to write or sing or play the guitar or whatever it is, and or paint and it always seems to me that artists, really interesting artists who are creating work while they're drunk and high, are creating that work despite the fact that they are drunk and high, not because they are drunk and high.
Yes.
And if you are in a situation like that, then I think you get frozen.
Yes.
Like you going, like you saying that you went moving into classical music and becoming more, and getting older and weirder. Which is I think something that's hard to do if you're stuck in that.
Well, the other thing too is that with when I was in the pop world, and I still am occasionally, but it is more centered around, not centered so much now, but it, certainly back then around drugs and alcohol. I mean, it was Courtney Love and Smashing Pumpkins and everybody and Jeff Buckley. So it was sort of this very hazy time, and it was fabulous in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Right. When you get into the classical world, drugs and alcohol have nothing to do with anything. Like it's just it's a total other subject. Once you get on stage and you're rehearsing or you're composing something or you're presenting, it's just 100% about the music, and that's it. And I've just always that has always been that has helped me a lot to have.
Yeah, I think also the collaborative nature. I mean, if you're working with a 60-piece orchestra,
there's no time for anything.
There's no and I think also the idea of collaboration with other people who are technically, if they're not writing the piece, the way they can play, they're just as good as you in terms of being able to
and better
hit the notes on the instrument.
Yeah, better in a lot of cases, in a lot of ways.
And I think that it's also like you want to bring your game up a little bit if you're around it. I think you're right. I think it becomes because I got sober when I was not when I was doing stand up, but I was doing a play. Yeah, I was doing the Rocky Horror Show in the West End in London, and there was a lot of moving parts and there was a lot of like I don't think Richard O'Brien was sober at that point either, but you could get hurt if you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, if the machine came down, and it kind of required you to be on top of it a little bit. And I think that's kind of encouraged me to. Also, when you see that look of disappointment on people who know you can do better, that's one of the most horrible things to see.
I know that. I know that look. I know that.
Yeah, look. It's my least favorite look. I try never to practice it on my children when I but if I really want to torture my boys, I'll say, I'm not.
How old are your boys now?
I have a 23-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Wow. Oh, so you're still in it. You're still in it.
I mean,
I have a 13-year-old daughter.
Right. You're dead. That's the in it.
That's the in it. But
it's an interesting challenge with the generation. Yeah. Not so much the 13-year-olds now. Like my 13-year-old, I feel like I can have I have a direct and easier communication with him. Yeah. But my older son is very much a generation where we're great, we go on fine, but it's a difficult generation for me to connect with.
Right.
I have to work at it a little bit because I feel like I can offend very easily. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt people's feelings, and I really genuinely don't. And I feel like it's easy to do that. With them.
I mean, my daughter. I think our 13-year-olds are in an interesting position because I think on one hand they're just really tough. What they've had to endure, what they've seen, with the whole pandemic thing, and then Trump, and like there's no sugar coating to the world, and phones, and so it's very, there on one hand, and at one time there's a lot of worrisome, especially I think with girls, it's kind of Well, I think actually it's bad with both. But that being said, I think they have to be tough, which is a good thing. I mean, they have to. They have to. They're not having it handed to them.
No, it's also. I mean, I'm very grateful that I came of age in a time when my behavior wasn't being digitized. Over. I mean, I made a fool of myself on a lot of evenings, falling down. Just. The truth is, I sometimes like to talk up my drinking as and drugging is kind of like a bad, wild, sort of crazy thing. But if it was just that, I'd probably still be doing it. It wasn't. It's kind of pathetic. It's the fetal position at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's the incontinence of mouth, speech and everywhere else.
No, totally.
The pathetic nature of it, I would hate to see that. And I'd be embarrassed by it. I also think, the idea of, people. I'm very glad that I got married and was in a stable relationship before dating apps as well, because I don't know how to. I wouldn't know how to do that. It seems it's a law. And junior high school is the world is junior high school.
Yes. No, it certainly is. No, it's very, and this is the thing also, as talking when I spoke earlier about getting older is sort of the new drug. But it is this strange kind of thing where you become, now I do feel like the nerdy teenager in the corner, like while the party's going on and like nobody's paying attention to me, and I'm like kind of have a crush on whatever, like the football player. Like it's I've just reverted back to that state, which is horrible in certain ways, but it's also you're really looking at you're kind of fascinated by the world as well. Like it's less because it's more scary. It then becomes more interesting.
Well, it contains terrors that I hadn't counted on. Yeah. The idea of my own, crumbling is less frightening to me than the fact that I have children and I love them more than I can understand. I don't know what to do with that. Yeah. And to have that kind of menace to hang around, it's a strangeness. But I think I quite like getting older. Yeah, if I'm honest.
No, I do. I mean, I just hit 51, and I will say that I loved my 40s. They were just flying high, gliding through, checking out the scene. It was just looking great, feeling fine. It was just amazing. Then you hit the 50s and you really you hit it, and it's only because it's not because you feel totally different, but there's a slight change. It's a very slight change, and you just start to have thoughts like, that little pain could be my death. It could happen, and it's just so there's just this, I think I'm imagining, and you can tell me that the early 50s are tricky because you just start to sort of there's these little bells that go off and you're like, oh, I imagine that by the end of your 50s, you're just like, whatever. You're like,
you kind of get used to it.
Like, okay,
I felt like by the end of my 50s, by the end of my 50s, I was used to it. When I turned 50, I was crazed. I didn't even want to talk about it. When I turned 60, I was like, it doesn't matter. And now that I'm 62, every now and again, it's shocking to me. That it's like, this is shocking that I'm 62. And it has that discordant quality. It has that weird, a weird piece of music, that Saturn, piece in the playlist.
But not to get too depressing about it. But since we're
I like it.
We're both of Celtic descent or something like that. I don't know. Are the Scottish Celts? The Scottish are Celts, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. But no, is that what I think is that the 60s, you probably get used to it. But sadly, and now I'm going to get really dark, my mother died when she was 63.
Right.
And I think, like, if you die in your 60s, it's terrible. Or if you're going to die, because you've just gotten into it and you're kind of looking forward to old age a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you start to, and to have that robbed, I think in a strange way is, I think so. So just make it past your 60s, because I think 60s.
Well, that's exactly.
I think once you get to your 70s, 70s is the new 30. That's what it is.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
70 is the new 30.
Yeah,
But it's like it living the day. It's now.
Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah.
And whenever I can be here in the moment, I'm slightly better than when I can't do that.
Yeah. I think 60s is the new 90.
Right. And then 70s is the new 30.
50s is the new 50. 50 is the new 50.
So what is 51 is the new 40. I think you'd be fine.
It's all fun.
It's been a joy speaking with you, Rufus.
Yes,
I was a little nervous about talking to you because I'm intimidated by great talent.
Thank you.
I don't like being around it that much. I find it unsettling.
And I was wondering, I think we have one friend in common. I mean, it's been ages, but you remember Jen Stills?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't seen her in ages, but I just remember her speaking about you. Jen,
was it okay?
Yeah, no, she toured with me once. She was great fun, an amazing character and a wonderful woman, and she spoke very highly of you.
You know Dominic Miller as well, don't you?
Dominic Miller.
He's Sting's guitarist.
Oh yeah. Well. Yeah. I sort of know.
Sort of know.
Maybe, probably.
I know. I haven't seen Dom in years either, but he's a good lad.
Yeah.
He can play a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Listen, it has been a great joy. I am, I think, going to come to Carnegie Hall on the 29th.
You must.
Yeah, I think
Carnegie Hall on the 29th, yes, of
November. 29th of November, right?
Yes, day after Thanksgiving, please.
Right. I think I might
it's quite a gamble we're taking.
I think you'll be okay.
Okay.
I think you'll be all right. I'll bring some friends.
Great. Please do.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Rufus.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye.